What's the meanest thing you did as a kid? This girl annoyed me, but she liked hanging out with me so much, I went to my guidance counselor to be like, I have enough friends. How can I get rid of her? He gave me some nice ways of letting her know that her friendship wasn't fulfilling to me, but I was in elementary school, so I took the gist of what he said and just told her to leave me alone. It hurt her pretty bad. She moved not too long after that. I feel terrible 20 years later. Similar story, but shame to say that happened after my prom. I had a very cool but recent female friend who agreed to go to the prom with me. I had crushed on her. We had a good party and she was acting very nice the whole time. After I tried to make some moves on her, unfortunately she didn't felt the same way. But still she let me know about it very politely without hurting me, and still wanted us to be friends. On one pretty bad day for me, she wrote to me asking what's up, and in anger I replied that I don't need her as just a friend and basically she can FCK off. I used more polite words, but the message was clearly to FCK off. She never spoke to me ever since, and it haunts me what a jerk I was to her. She did everything right. Not her fault she haven't felt same way I did. For my defense, at that time I had such a mess in the head, lots of negative emotions about myself and big lack of confidence. I grew up now, build confidence, and I think it's safe to say that I matured a lot. I will definitely make this right someday. She did not deserve that kind of treatment. She is a good person and gave me really good memories. I was at a Taco Bell one night with some friends and there was a mat in front of the doors inside. Whenever someone walked in, they tripped on a crease in the mat. Every time someone fixed it, I walked over and put the crease back in it. My older sister invited a friend over when I was probably 7 years old. I was thin, my sister was thin, it's genetic, you get the gist. Anyway, her friend was rather overweight for a 13-year-old. I asked my sister why her friend was so fat, since I'd never seen any other obese kids. Her friend overheard me say it, and it made her cry. She didn't spend the night as originally planned, and I felt horrible for having hurt her feelings. You know those dried up white dog turds? I convinced my brother they were wild growing marshmallows and got him to put one in his mouth. My little sister and I had separate buckets of Lego. Hers were the ones more targeted to girls, lots of pink, flowers, etc. But I wanted them. So, fully knowing that they would be nearly impossible to separate, I looked her square in the eye and mixed her entire bucket into mine. I still feel bad about it, and that was about 25 years ago. I found one of the sets she had on eBay and gave it to her for Christmas last year, but I know I can't really make up for it. I got very annoyed when a boy in my class was using a gel pen to pick his nose because, well, they were for the class, not just him. Rather than politely asking him to remove it from said orifice, I simply struck the gel pen with force using my palm. It went about an inch up the nostril and stayed there for a couple seconds while he looked really confused before he pulled it out. I still remember his horrified face when he looked at me and said, "You could have killed me," which made everyone who didn't know already what had happened turned and stared. The teacher shouted at me a lot about the dangers of impulsive behavior, such as forcing sharp objects into a passage that leads directly to the brain, and fair one. My comeuppance, there was then a rumor going round that I was a secret murderer, you know, unlike those open murderers you see walking about all the time, which lasted a good few years. Or bad few years for me. The worst part of this story is that they were those smelly gel pens you used to get, and Dan wasn't even picking his nose. He was just trying to get a whiff of the orange zesty chemical aroma that probably got us all high in hindsight. But I didn't think about that. I just saw someone breaking the rules and disregarded common sense, and in the process I could have gone to a youth prison for manslaughter. I have no idea if my parents were informed, but if they were, I can only assume that they have been too terrified of their own child to mention it ever since. I was super jealous of my younger half-sister. 8 years younger. She lived with my mom, who had a lot more disposable income. I lived with my dad, who struggled to make ends meet. BTW, my dad is a much better parent, and there are very good reasons why I lived with him. My sister got all these cool toys, new clothes, etc. I even thought her nickname from our mother was better. She called her Lovetu. My nickname was Puputini. Why? I don't have a single clue. Ma's batshit crazy. So I told my little sister that the child with the longest nickname is loved more. She cried. A lot. TL, doctor, told my baby sister our mother loved me more BC my nickname was longer. We met two families on holiday. One we loved, the other were okay. We invited them to stay at ours for a weekend, but the good family couldn't come. The okay family were wealthy and had a spoiled, annoying little shit weird son who was 2 years younger than me. I was 12, he 10. Real brat, wouldn't shut the fuck up about his new iPod Touch and Beats headphones. He would break my stuff then complain that it wasn't good enough for him. I even came back from brushing my teeth one night to find him in my bed. His mom came in and told me that he was the guest so he should be allowed to sleep where he wants. I argued after she left and he ended up crying in his own bed. On the last day, we were going to some landmark and they were gonna go home straight from there. At the end, while our parents were saying goodbye, I begged him to let me have 2 minutes on his iPod. He loved that I was so desperate, so he gave me and timed the minute from his expensive watch. I then used that minute to change his password to some random numbers I didn't even know what they were, then opened a game. After the minute was up he snatched it back and didn't look up from the game as he got in the car to leave. His parents made him say bye and he finally locked his iPod and looked up. After a half-assed wave, he went back to it. The last thing I saw was his confused face as he typed in his password multiple times, him looking up to me as I smirked, and then him screaming and kicking his dad's seat as he threw the iPod. I drove off and never saw him again. I tricked a kid into eating rocks. He had bullied my sisters and I at school and was trying to steal our candy. He had left for a bit saying that he would be back. I filled one of those smaller boxes of nerds with the small rocks from the end of the driveway and gave it to him when he came back. He took the box, downed it, and started spitting it out. A couple decades later and it still haunts me that I could have choked him. Yes, he was a bully, but that was not a good reason for me to be mean in return. I beat up one of my handicapped friends just to fit in, but the hurt and guilt I felt was so overwhelming that over the next few days I apologized so much to him and to prove that I defended him from the other mean kids that were harassing him and who I was trying to look cool in front of. I was only 11 or 12 but I learned a lot from that. I never did anything just to fit in after that, and I always stuck up for the weaker ones in society. I guess I learned that I had a deep conscience and heart because to this day I still feel bad about it. I didn't stomp him or anything, just a couple punches, but still it was a dirty thing to do. Him and I stayed friends for years until he passed away. The meanest thing I did as a kid was not bully another kid. Here's why. I remember when I was like 7-8, I hated one boy in my class. He was your typical douchebag, always bragging about being intellectually superior. He was not, and not being like other boys, whatever that means. I hated him so much I thought about bullying him and having my friends harass him. But then I saw an interview of some actor, don't remember who said that he owed his success to the bullies and people who told him he couldn't make it, because it motivated him to prove them wrong. So I decided I would not bully this kid. I would not indirectly motivate him to become successful. Way back when the Power Rangers first came out, a kid in my class had brought a bag of chocolates with the characters of the show. Now this kid and I were bitter rivals at the time. To put it short, we were both heads of a clique that detested each other. One day during break, we were all playing capture the flag on the quad. His click versus mine. I got cocky and he was able to catch me, so had to go back to my home base. At this point I was livid because I accused him of cheating by camping their flag. So out of spite, I went through his backpack and stole all the Power Rangers chocolates he had and hid them away behind some loose wallpaper. I knew he would blame me, so when they asked me if I've seen them, I told them that they're welcome to check my belongings. Was found innocent. Went back to my P.R. Choco stash at the end of the day and ate them all like a rabid raccoon and got sick as soon as I got home. Some 20 years later he and I are best friends and I'm godfather to his daughter. Never told him.